A grandmother was close to getting out of a bad relationship when this happened.
There are stories that shake a community, and then there's stories that echo far beyond it. Stories that leave people asking how something so unthinkable could happen in a place so ordinary. This is the story of 51-year-old Samantha Boseman, a devoted mother and grandmother, a quiet light in her family, a woman who worked hard, loved deeply, and asked for nothing more than peace and stability. To the people who knew her, Samantha wasn't just a name. She was the one who kept everyone grounded, the one who still found a way to smile, even when life demanded more from her than it gave. And yet, in the middle of what should have been a normal afternoon, everything changed. On a day no one in her neighborhood will ever forget, deputies responded to a call that didn't sound unusual at first. A welfare check. A simple request. Nothing about it hinted at the heartbreak waiting on the other side of the door. Nothing suggested that the people rushing to see if Samantha was okay would walk into a scene that would haunt them, or that her family's world was about to collapse. What happened to Samantha wasn't a random tragedy. It wasn't the result of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. According to investigators, it was something far more personal and far more devastating. It was the kind of tragedy that grows slowly, quietly, behind closed doors, until one day, it breaks through in a way no one can undo. Before the truth began to unfold, friends had no idea that Samantha had been living under a shadow she didn't deserve. Her family had no warning that the person she trusted, someone she should have been safe around, was the one they would soon hear detectives speaking about. And when the details emerged, it felt like a puzzle made of heartbreak. Signs that didn't look like signs until it was too late. Behavior that didn't seem alarming until investigators connected the pieces. But here's the part that gripped the entire community. The suspect didn't flee. He didn't try to disappear. He stayed. And when deputies arrived, his behavior set off immediate alarm bells, an uneasiness, a tension, something in the atmosphere that made officers feel that the situation was far from normal. As investigators stepped inside, they found Samantha. And in that moment, the story shifted from uncertainty to tragedy, from questions to answers no one wanted. What followed was a whirlwind: interviews, evidence collection, statements, and a suspect whose calm demeanor only raised more questions. Why did this happen? What led to this moment? And how did a woman so full of quiet strength end up facing danger from someone within her own home? Today, we walk through Samantha's story, not to sensationalize it, but to honor her life, uncover the truth, and shine a light on the warning signs that are too often missed until it's too late. This is the story of Samantha Boseman. Welcome to LLED True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we're breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. When the sun settles over southwest Atlanta, the streets, quiet, familiar, rarely hint at secrets locked behind closed doors. On Sandridge Place, in a neighborhood called Sandalwood Estates, 51-year-old Samantha Boseman lived her life the way many of us do, quietly, with hopes, routines, and the small comforts of home. Samantha wasn't a headline. She wasn't someone that strangers thought about when they heard the word victim. She was just a woman, a neighbor, maybe a co-worker, a friend. She opened her door every morning, walked her own path, carried her own dreams. But sometimes, ordinary lives carry hidden weight. In the months leading up to that fatal night, those closest to Samantha quietly sensed a change. Love had turned complicated. The person she trusted, the person she shared parts of her life with, was becoming someone darker. She had tried to step away. She had tried to close a chapter. What she didn't know was that closing a door wouldn't end the danger. It would awaken it. It wasn't a dramatic fight. It wasn't a headline argument. There were no sirens, no public warnings, no visible bruises that demanded sympathy. Instead, there were quiet walks, uncertain phone calls, heavy silences, a decision to leave a relationship, something many people around the world know. And for Samantha, that decision would cost everything. On the evening of February 5th, 2025, life as she knew it should have carried on like any other Wednesday. Instead, just before 6:15 p.m., someone called the police requesting a welfare check at her home. Neighbors said they'd heard nothing out of the ordinary. No signs of a struggle, no shouts. But when police arrived, the door was locked from the inside. Concerned, they asked for help from firefighters to force entry. What they found inside would shock a quiet neighborhood. Multiple gunshot wounds. A home-turned-crime scene. A life ended in silence. Medical personnel pronounced Samantha dead at the scene. The hours after, the name Samantha Boseman whispered through the community. Disbelief, grief, heartbreak. A 51-year-old woman gone. Not because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but because the danger came to her. Her death joined the growing list of lives lost in 2024 in Atlanta. But before grief, before headlines, before police reports, Samantha was more than just a statistic. She was a person who loved, who hoped, who tried to find a way out. She was a reminder that danger doesn't always come from strangers in dark alleys. Sometimes it hides in familiarity. This is where her story begins. A quiet home, a decision to leave, a night that no one saw coming, a life that ended, but a story that demands to be heard. The hours after Samantha Boseman's body was discovered felt unreal, as if the world itself had paused, holding its breath. Police tape fluttered in the evening breeze. Patrol cars lined Sandwich Place, casting red and blue flashes across the quiet homes of Sandalwood Estates. Neighbors stood on porches, their silhouettes tense and silent. Word spread quickly. Samantha gone? A woman everyone greeted, waved to, or saw walking to her car each morning. Suddenly the center of a homicide investigation.
A family now has justice after their loved one was shot and killed by an abusive boyfriend. Good evening, I'm George Estevez.
Glad you're here with us. I'm Linda Stouffer. This is video of that shooting. The victim was inside her home when her boyfriend of 4 years fired through the door, killing her. Channel 2 investigative reporter Mark Winnie is live at the Fulton County DA's Domestic Violence Division. Mark, you found out how the killer tried to cover his tracks.
Yeah, Cassie Hall, the lead prosecutor on the case, says domestic abuse can take many forms. Part of the reason the Fulton County DA's office has an entire division devoted to domestic violence, and in this case, there is economic abuse, but then physical violence, murder.
I just was broken, completely broken, shattered.
We're tired of burying our women to abusers.
I break down and cry every single day. Some days I don't even want to go on.
It's like, okay, you're guilty. Dang, my mom still is not gonna hug me. And my mom's still not here. But he needs to be locked up.
Samantha Boseman tried to close the door on her 4-year relationship with Maxwell Lartery. And in retaliation, he fired a gun through her front door, captured on Ring video, and killed her. Say Fulton County Chief Senior Assistant District Attorneys Cassie Hall and Christina Robinson.
And there's another video that I have where he's saying, if you come outside, I'm gonna shoot your house.
Who say Max Lartery fired 4 shots through the door and 3 of them struck Samantha Boseman, mortally wounding her.
Is there a lesson for others in troubled relationships? I would say yes. I would say knowing enough is enough.
Ms. Hall and Ms. Robinson say earlier this month a jury convicted Lartery of murder and more. And Senior Judge David Emerson sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus 5 years, plus 10 years probation if he ever made parole.
She's just a beautiful spirit, just happy, joyful. She'll get on you if she had to, but she was just a happy, helping person.
The 2 trial prosecutors say Lartery, 33 at the time of the shooting, had not been contributing to the household bills and wanted Ms. Boseman, 51 at the time, to give up custody of 2 of her grandchildren, whom she had adopted. Zipporah Ferguson says shortly before the shooting, her mom came to Ms. Ferguson's job crying.
She was like, I'm done with him, and everything like that.
Prosecutors say Atlanta police, alerted by neighbors who heard gunshots earlier in the day and had not been able to reach Ms. Boseman on her phone for hours, arrived to find shattered glass and shell casings. and in her kitchen, police found Samantha Boseman dead, though she had been alive and bleeding for some time and might have lived if Lartery had called for help soon after the shooting.
He's walking down the street calling her out of her name. He's still making threats.
Instead, Ms. Robinson and Ms. Hall say Lartery traveled about Metro Atlanta, trying to establish an alibi, finishing the night at a Hooters, though by that time her death had been discovered hours earlier. District Attorney Fonnie Willis.
As this grandmother lay and bleed out in her very home, he was gallivanting all through the town, ending his night at a Hooters. It's just a horrible disregard for life.
People think of domestic violence as just physical, but it can be economic abuse. He wasn't paying bills. He wasn't being a responsible male. She was able to be financially stable, travel around a lot, and she just wanted to genuinely help Max.
Now, a spokesman said the Fulton County Public Defender's Office represented Mr. Lartery, though we must decline additional comments as a motion for a new trial has been filed. We use imagery obtained through the Fulton County District Attorney's Office and the family for this story. Reporting live at the Domestic Violence Division for the DA's office, Mark Winnie.
But stepping away from someone who refuses to let go can be dangerous, and investigators knew that. Detectives reached out to family members, friends, and others who had spoken with Samantha recently. Their voices, trembling and grieving, painted a picture of a woman trying to move forward, someone who felt the need to distance herself from a man whose behavior had troubled her. The exact details didn't spill out in one dramatic confession. They emerged slowly, the way truth often does. Small remarks, offhand comments, hints that she felt unsettled, little pieces that, when arranged together, drew the outline of a motive, a breakup, a partner who didn't want things to end, a woman who had chosen her safety, her peace, but whose choice may have provoked anger instead of acceptance. Investigators looked deeper. Who had access to Samantha? Who knew her schedule? Who could lock the door behind them? Who had reason to silence her? The neighborhood was canvassed. Cameras were checked. Friends were interviewed. But even as clues began to line up, the emotional impact rippled outward. Family members were devastated. Their phones buzzed relentlessly. Condolences, confusion, disbelief. The kind of questions no one can answer. Why? How? What did she do to deserve this? Friends sat together in living rooms, replaying old messages, reading through old texts, trying to make sense of the senseless. They remembered her laughter, her gentleness, her tendency to give people chances. They remembered how she always tried to handle things quietly, never wanting to burden anyone with her struggles. That part hurt the most. She had carried something alone. Neighbors were shaken. Some had seen Samantha just days before, smiling, carrying groceries, exchanging polite waves. To think someone would harm her here, in this peaceful street, left everyone uneasy. The idea that danger could walk so close without announcing itself made the neighborhood feel suddenly smaller, more fragile. And then there were the detectives, piecing together a puzzle that had only one possible ending, but dozens of pathways to reach it. Every question led to another. Every detail demanded re-examination. The locked door, the quiet scene, the multiple gunshot wounds, the absence of forced entry. These weren't the marks of a stranger. They were the signs of someone familiar, someone Samantha knew, someone she once let into her life. But even as the investigation narrowed, something deeper unfolded, the emotional conflict beneath the tragedy. This wasn't just about solving a case. It was about confronting the uncomfortable truth of how often danger hides in connection instead of anonymity. Samantha's story was no longer just hers. It had become a mirror for countless people living in situations they are afraid to walk away from. Her family struggled with the heartbreak of hindsight, the moments they wondered if they should have checked on her sooner, if they had missed any signs, any subtle calls for help. Her friends carried guilt they couldn't shake, wishing she had told them more, wishing they had asked more questions. And the community? They felt vulnerable. If something like this could happen to Samantha, a woman who kept to herself, who didn't start trouble, who simply made a personal decision to end a relationship, then it could happen to anyone. Meanwhile, detectives pressed forward, their focus sharp. They refused to let Samantha's story fade. They questioned the people closest to her. They retraced her final days. They looked at phone records, movements, and connections. One name kept returning to the front. The man she had tried to distance herself from. A relationship ending. A partner angry. A motive forming. The tension around the case grew. The community waited. Family members prayed for answers. Investigators moved closer to the truth. Act 2 closes not with resolution, but with a tightening circle. A sense that the person responsible was not far, not unreachable, and not invisible. A person driven by emotion, by refusal, by the dangerous belief that if they could not have Samantha, no one else should. And as detectives prepared to confront the inevitable truth, Act 3 waited. The part where grief turns into pursuit of justice, and where Samantha's voice, though silenced, demands to be heard through the actions of those who refuse to let her memory fade. The house on Sandridge Place sat quietly in the days after Samantha Boseman's life was taken, but the silence was deceptive. Behind closed doors, investigators worked hour after hour, replaying timelines, measuring distances, pulling camera footage from nearby homes, and trying to understand how a woman who had been trying to create distance from a troubled relationship ended up losing everything inside her own home. And while the street looked calm, the emotional reverberation of her loss spread quickly, first through those who loved her, then through neighbors, then through people across Atlanta who had never met her but felt something heavy settle in their chest when they read her name. Because the more detectives uncovered, the more one truth became clear. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. This was the final act of someone who refused to let her walk away. As investigators pieced together the last 48 hours of Samantha's life, a clearer picture began to form. Witness statements pointed to tension between Samantha and the man she had been involved with, tension that had grown sharper as she prepared to step away from the relationship for good. Electronic records, messages, and phone data added more weight. Friends had said she had been distancing herself. She had confided her worries. She had been trying to reclaim peace. The investigators knew what they were looking at. A pattern recognizable in too many cases, where leaving becomes the most dangerous step. The breakthrough came when evidence inside the home, along with the forced entry welfare check timeline, narrowed the window to a single person of interest. Detectives quietly moved, working with precision. And when they were ready, they made the announcement. On February 7th, 2025, just days after her death, they identified their suspect. A man who had once occupied space in Samantha's life. A man who, according to investigators, had become the last person she saw alive. Though the justice process was still just beginning, the community finally had something they desperately needed. A name and a direction toward accountability. For her friends and family, the news brought a complex wave of emotions. Relief mingled with heartbreak, clarity mixed with disbelief. People who knew Samantha described her as warm, level-headed, and hopeful. The kind of person who didn't argue loudly, who didn't create chaos, who tried to leave situations quietly instead of fighting her way out. Now, they struggled with questions no one could fully answer. Why couldn't she walk away safely? Why wasn't the growing danger visible sooner? Why does the final attempt to leave sometimes awaken the worst in someone? Counselors, advocates, and community members stepped into the conversation. Local organizations began speaking out, reminding people of something uncomfortable but essential. So many lives are lost not because someone stayed, but because someone tried to leave. And Samantha's story became another example whispered at local meetings, community safety workshops, and online spaces aimed at prevention. Her name became part of a larger plea. Listen to early warnings. Protect those who choose to walk away. Take every fear seriously. In the following weeks, the neighborhood where she lived changed subtly. People became more attentive. Porch lights stayed on longer. Neighbors checked on one another more. Conversations that had once been casual became concerned, careful, invested. And each time someone passed a corner where police cars had once been, they remembered her. The quiet woman who had lived her life privately. The woman who tried to make a difficult decision and paid the ultimate price. Her story lingered like a shadow on the walls of the homes nearby. But it also became something else, a reminder of how important it is to speak, to share concerns, to check on people even when they insist they're okay. As detectives presented their evidence, the case moved forward with steady momentum. The suspect, facing mounting proof and public scrutiny, became the focus of legal proceedings. And while the wheels of justice can turn slowly, each hearing, each update brought Samantha's loved ones one step closer to closure. The prosecution prepared meticulously. The defense tried to form narratives, but the facts remained firm, grounded in the methodical work of a team determined to honor a life unjustly taken. And for Samantha, justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about truth, about ensuring that her final chapter was not defined by silence, but by clarity. In the months that followed, something powerful emerged. People began sharing Samantha's story not out of fear, but out of purpose. Her name became a rallying point for conversations about emotional safety, about recognizing early warning signs, about understanding that leaving a harmful relationship requires support, sometimes more than anyone realizes. And even those who had never met her found themselves affected. Her story stirred empathy. It reminded people that danger doesn't always look dramatic, that some of the quietest struggles are the most perilous. Her legacy grew far beyond her street, far beyond Atlanta, spreading through online spaces, community groups, and among people determined not to let her memory fade. Samantha Boseman's story is a deeply human one, a story of courage, of trying to reclaim peace, of wanting a new beginning. She was a real woman with a real life, real emotions, real fears. And what happened to her should never happen to anyone. Her life deserves more than a headline. Her story deserves to become a reminder, a lesson, and a reason to protect others who may be walking a similar path. So as you watch this video and reflect on Samantha's journey, I ask you, if someone you know is pulling away from a troubling situation, reach out. If you sense something isn't right, check in. If someone confides fear, take it seriously. And for this channel, where we bring real stories to light, so they're never forgotten, your support matters. If Samantha's story moved you, honor her by liking this video, subscribing, sharing her story, and helping raise awareness for others who need a way out. Her life had meaning. Her voice still matters. And by keeping her story alive, we ensure her light continues to shine, even in the places where darkness once tried to silence it.